Ranade, Gandhi and Jinnah by Baba Sahib Ambedkar. 7. Wrongly labeled as 8. How does Ranade compare with others? Comparisons are always odious and unpleasant. At the same time, it is true that there is or nothing more illuminating than comparisons. Of course, in making them, one must bear in mind that to be interesting and instructive, comparisons must be between those that are alike. Fortunately, there is field for comparison. Ranade was a social reformer, and as social reformer, he could be usefully compared with other social reformers. Particularly illuminating will be the comparison between Ranade and Jyotiba Phule. Phule was born in 1827 and died in 1890. Ranade was born in 1842 and died in 1901. Thus, Phule and Ranade were contemporaries, and both were foremost social reformers. Some may perhaps demur to the wisdom of comparing Ranade with other politicians. This can only be on the ground that Ranade was not a politician. To say that Ranade was not a politician is to impose a very narrow and very restricted meaning upon the term politician. A politician does not merely trade in politics, but he also represents a particular faith covering both the method as well as the metaphysics of politics. Ranade was the founder of a school of politics which was distinctive for its method as well as the metaphysics. Used in the sense, Ranade was a politician and could be usefully compared with other politicians. Comparisons of Ranade with social reformers and with politicians cannot but be illuminating, and there is enough material for such comparisons. The question really is one of time and taste. Time will not permit any extensive comparison of Ranade being made both with social reformers as well as with politicians. I must really choose between comparing Ranade with social reformers or with politicians. This is a matter of taste. Left to myself, I would have preferred to use my available time to compare Ranade with Phule, for I regard social reform more fundamental than political reform. Unfortunately, my taste is different from the taste of the audience, and I feel that in detaining the audience, I must be guided more by its likes and dislikes than my own. The ardor for social reform has cooled down. The craze for politics has held the Indian public in its grip. Politics has become an appetizer, a mastic. The more one tastes is the more one craves it. The task I am undertaking is a very unpleasant one, and if I venture upon it, it is only because it is my duty to expound fully and the desire of the public to know truly the value of Rande's political philosophy and his place among politicians of today. Who are the present day politicians with whom Ranade is to be compared? Ranade was a great politician of his day. He must therefore be compared with the greatest of today. We have on the horizon of India two great men, so big that they could be identified without being named, Gandhi and Jinnah. What sort of a history they will make may be a matter for posterity to tell. For us, it is enough that they do indisputably make headlines for the press. They hold leading strings. One leads the Hindus and the other leads the Muslims. They are the idols and heroes of the hour. I propose to compare them with Ranade. How do they compare with Ranade? It is necessary to make some observations upon their temperaments and methods with which they have now familiarized us. I can give only my impressions of them for what they are worth. The first thing that strikes me is that it would be difficult to find two persons who would rival them for their colossal egoism, to whom personal ascendancy is everything and the cause of the country a mere counter on the table. They have made Indian politics a matter of personal feud. Consequences have no terror for them. Indeed, they do not occur to them until they happen. When they do happen, they either forget the cause, or if they remember it, they overlook it with a complacency which saves them from any remorse. They choose to stand on a pedestal of splendid isolation. They wall themselves off from their equals. They prefer to open themselves to their inferiors. They are very unhappy at and impatient of criticism, but are very happy to be fawned upon by flunkies. Both have developed a wonderful stagecraft and arranged things in such a way that they are always in the limelight wherever they go. Each, of course, claims to be supreme. If supremacy was their only claim, it would be a small wonder. In addition to supremacy, each claims infallibility for himself. Pius IX, during whose sacred regime as Pope the issue of infallibility was raging, said, "Before I was Pope, I believed in papal infallibility. Now I feel it." This is exactly the attitude of the two leaders whom Providence, may I say in his unguarded moments, has appointed to lead us. This feeling of supremacy and infallibility is strengthened by the press. One cannot help saying that the language used by Gardiner to describe the Northcliffe brand of journalism, in my opinion, quite appropriately describes the present state of journalism in India. Journalism in India was once a profession. It has now become a trade. It has no moral function than the manufacture of soap. It does not regard itself as the responsible advisor of the public. To give the news uncolored by any motive to prevent a certain view of public policy which it believes to be for the good of the community, to correct and chastise without fear all those, no matter how high, who have chosen a wrong or a barren path, is not regarded by journalism in India its first or foremost duty. To accept a hero and worship him has become its principal duty. Under it, news gives place to sensation, reasoned opinion to unreasoning passion, appeal to the minds of reasonable people to appeal to the emotions of the irresponsible. Lord Salisbury spoke of the Northcliffe journalism as written by office boys or for office boys. Indian journalism is all that, plus something more. It is written by drum boys to glorify their heroes. Never has the interest of country been sacrificed so senselessly for the propagation of hero worship. Never has hero worship become so blind as we see it in India today. There are, I am glad to say, honorable exceptions, but they are too few and their voice is never heard. Entrenched behind the plaudits of the press, the spirit of domination exhibited by these two great men has transgressed all limits. By their domination, they have demoralized their followers and demoralized politics. By their domination, they have made half their followers fools and the other half hypocrites. In establishing their supremacy, they have taken the aid of big business and money magnates. For the first time in our country, money is taking the field as an organized power. The questions which President Roosevelt propounded for American public to consider will arise here if they are not already risen. Who shall rule, wealth or man? Which shall lead, money or intellect? Who shall fill public stations, educated and patriotic free men or the feudal serfs of corporate capital? For the present, Indian politics, at any rate the Hindu part of it, instead of being spiritualized, has become grossly commercialized, so much so that it has become a byword for corruption. Many men of culture are refusing to concern themselves in the cesspool. Politics has become a kind of sewage system, intolerably savory and unsanitary. To become a politician is like going to work in the drain. Politics in the hands of these two great men have become a competition in extravaganza. If Mr. Gandhi is known as the Mahatma, Mr. Jinnah must be known as Quaid-e-Azam. If Gandhi has the Congress, Mr. Jinnah has the Muslim League. If the Congress has a working committee and the All India Congress Committee, the Muslim League must have its working committee and its council. The session of the Congress must be followed by a session of the League. If the Congress issues a statement, the League must also follow suit. If the Congress passes a resolution of 17,000 words, the Muslim League's resolution must exceed it by at least 1,000 words. If the Congress President has a press conference, the Muslim League President must have his. If the Congress must address an appeal to the United Nations, the Muslim League must not allow itself to be outbidden. When is all this to end? When is there to be a settlement? There are no near prospects. They will not meet except on preposterous conditions. Jinnah insists that Gandhi should admit that he is a Hindu. Gandhi insists that Jinnah should admit that he is one of the leaders of the Muslims. Never has there been such a deplorable state of bankruptcy of statesmanship as one sees in the two leaders of India. They are making long and interminable speeches like lawyers whose trade it is to contest everything, concede nothing, and talk by the hour. Suggest anything by way of solution for the deadlock to either of them, and it is met by an everlasting nay. Neither will consider the solution of the problems which is not eternal. Between them, Indian politics has become frozen, to use a well known banking phrase, and no political action is possible. How does Ranade strike as compared to these two? I have no personal impression to give, but reading what others have said, I think I can say what he must have been like. He had not a tinge of egotism in him. His intellectual attainments could have justified any amount of pride, nay, even insolence, but he was the most modest of men. Serious youths were captivated by his learning and geniality. Many, feeling completely under his sway, responded to him, ennobling influence, and molded their whole lives with the passionate reverence for their adored master. He refused to be satisfied with the praises of fools and was never afraid of moving in the company of equals and of the give and take it involves. He never claimed to be a mystic relying on the inner voice. He was a rationalist, prepared to have his views tested in the light of reason and experience. His greatness was natural. He needed no aid of the stage, nor the technique of an assumed eccentricity, nor the means of a subsidized press. As I said, Ranade was principally a social reformer. He was not a politician in the sense of one who trades in politics, but he had played an important role in the political advancement of India. To some of the politicians, he acted as the teacher who secured such signal successes and who dazzled their critics by their brilliance. To some, he acted as the guide, but to all, he acted as the philosopher. What was the political philosophy of Ranade? It may be summed in three propositions. 1. We must not set up as our ideal something which is purely imaginary. An ideal must be such that it must carry the assurance that it is a practicable one. 2. In politics, sentiment and temperament of the people are more important than intellect and theory. This is particularly so in the matter of framing a constitution. A constitution is as much a matter of taste as clothes are. Both must fit, both must please. 3. In political negotiations, the rule must be what is possible. That does not mean that we should be content with what is offered. No, it does not mean this. It means that you must not refuse what is offered when you know that your sanctions are inadequate to compel your opponent to concede more. These are the three main doctrines of Ranade's political philosophy. It would be quite easy to illustrate them by appropriate quotations from his writings and his speeches. There is no time for that, nor is there any necessity, for they must be clear to every student of Ranade's speeches and writings. Who could quarrel with Ranade on these three propositions, and if there be one, on which? On the first only a visionary will quarrel. We need not take any notice of him. The second proposition is so evident that we could only agree at our peril. The third proposition is something on which a difference of opinion is possible. Indeed, it is with this which divided the liberals from the congressmen. I am not a liberal, but I am sure the view Ranade held was the right one. There can be no compromise on principle, and there should not be. But once the principle is agreed upon, there can be no objection to realize it by installments. Graduation in politics is inevitable, and when the principle is accepted, it is not harmful, and indeed it may, in certain circumstances, be quite advantageous. On this third proposition, there was really no difference between him and Tilak, except this. Tilak would have had the possible maximized by the application of sanctions. Ranade would look askance at sanctions. That is all. On the rest they were agreed. The absence of sanctions in political philosophy of Ranade need not detract much from its worth. We all know what sanctions are available to us. We have tried all, old as well as new. With what effect I need not stop to describe. The end.